I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, my topic is We Need to Agree. Not about conclusions, but about our purpose, a process for discerning what's true from what's not true, and a plan. I'm going to apply this in 4 hot debates. 1, good versus evil. 2, big versus small. 3, Hamilton versus Franklin. And then 4, Trump versus no one. Let's get started. I don't know about you, but my universe has been shrinking over the last 3 years. I was never into mainstream media, and I wasn't into NPR's lamestream media, but I was a big consumer of Democracy Now! I felt like it saved my life when I found it, that I was finally having someone talk about the realities that I was seeing. And that stayed true for me for at least 10 years until about the Trump era. And at that point, all I was hearing was anti-Trump. There was no more global news. It seemed like nothing was ever happening in the rest of the world. All it was targeting Trump. But when Amy turned on Julian Assange, it really shook my faith. And then with the start of COVID, it was clear that Amy had fallen hook, line, and sinker for the "we must protect each other" line. So I've broken from that, and now I'm in a corner where I never thought I would be, where I'm listening to people from a lot of different sides of any given issue, and those who are getting at least 9 out of 10 right that I already know that I agree with are giving me a reason to entertain that 10th possibility. And so I'm reminded of Alice in Wonderland when she tells the Queen, well, you just can't believe the impossible. And the Queen says, well, maybe you haven't had much practice at it. I sometimes believe 6 impossible things before breakfast. And that's, I think, where I'm getting to. And even within that rarefied little pocket of fewer than a dozen journalists that I believe are getting it pretty much right, they don't agree with each other. So you can have Dr. Robert Malone and Matthew Ehret, who agree on 9/11, on COVID, Ukraine, and Trump, but then you have Matt being a Hamilton fan and Dr. Malone being a Jeffersonian, and I myself being for Franklin. So then you have someone like Aaron Mate and Matt Taibbi, who have done brilliant work on Ukraine, but who still say Putin is a villain. He's someone who violated UN laws and should have pursued other options. But neither one have been able to say what those options were that were available to Putin that he did not pursue. And then you have Russell Brand and Glenn Greenwald, with whom I agree about almost everything, except that they are vegan, vegetarian, and anti-meat, which aligns with the Great Reset agenda to get rid of the sovereignty of communities to be able to produce their own food. So I think you need to start with a purpose. And my purpose is to enable all communities to be sovereign, to be able to support themselves and make their own trade laws and control their own economies and take responsibility for themselves. The more that I see the contradictions for myself, the more things I need to question. I would never have thought that I'd be someone questioning the narrative of climate change. And yet, when I hear Biden saying, oh, these gas prices, this is going to be a painful time. We're going to get out of this stronger than ever, where we're not going to be using fossil fuels. That is such an extreme position when I know that part of The issue with Ukraine has been the US promising to send all of its oil and gas to Europe to make up for what they're not getting so that they can get higher prices there, but at the same time deprive us. And I hear that coming from my own county, where they're saying they're going to phase out the gas stoves, first at residential and then commercial. And commercial kitchens have said that when they've gone to induction ovens, that their cost has risen by 3.5 times. Another place that these contradictions have reared their ugly head is with all the talk now about Nazis because of Ukraine. And in some countries, they are glorifying now the Nazis, but it's also raising questions about, was there a divided group? Was Hitler really the villain, the face of evil that the West has always used him to be? And I remembered reading a passage in Elie Weisel's Night. And at the time I thought, wait a minute, that can't be true. So let me read it to you. Not far from us, flames, huge flames, were rising from a ditch. Something was being burned there. A truck drew close and unloaded its hold. Small children, babies. Yes, I did see this with my own eyes. Children thrown into the flames. When I read that, I thought, there's no way. If you want to have a mob of people who outnumber the guards, realize that there is absolutely no hope, do the most horrendous thing that you can imagine, and those people will stop docilely walking into your gas chambers. So I knew when I read that it was a lie. But it wasn't until all of this has come up about the Nazis that other people have been giving more information. And I've gone and researched where Elie Weisel doesn't have a tattoo that he would have had from being in Auschwitz. That what they say is that he's never been in a concentration camp. When his rabbi asked him if this was true, he said, sometimes you have to tell a lie in order to tell the truth. And so this was classified as fiction, as literature, until they tried to start Israel. And at that time, because he is a Zionist along with his family, this became something that was autobiography. So once you know that someone will lie to you about something, especially something this important, you know that there's nothing they wouldn't lie about. It doesn't mean it is a lie, but it means that you have to ask the question. So I think we need a process in which we consider everything on the table in the realm of possibility. And then we look at all the factors for what can separate something that's true from something that's a lie. And those are things from journalism, from history, from anthropology, and from science. All of those have ways in which you can separate those two things. And even in our logic, we need to trust our own minds, but not trust authority. That authority is not a good reason. And I think neither is association. I think that someone's associations, if they're not showing up in how they think and what they do and what they say, isn't really, for me, a factor for why I would dismiss them or not. Why is this important? Because when you change your mind, you're still learning. Once you get to a point where you're no longer changing your mind, then you are no longer progressing. You're stuck. I've realized what a good thing it is that I have never been tempted by celebrity, because it's hard once you have a following to be able to take the risk of changing your mind about something that many people may have been drawn to you because of. Because for many people, they go to the internet, they say, as an echo chamber to find other people who already agree with what they think. For me, I do the exact opposite. I'm only reading people who have the power to change my mind. And I think we should be bragging about how many things we've changed our minds about. What's become increasingly evident to me and to others is that there is no way to stop this train until it crashes. That people are so caught up in this way of thinking, and various people like Caitlin Johnstone have been writing about the anger that people have when you tell them something that is different than what they already think. And Charles Eisenstein has also been writing about that lately, where it's not just, oh, gee, I disagree with you. There's something visceral about it being a threat to crumbling that whole worldview. And so, in my opinion, this will not end until the agenda of the Great Reset becomes evident to everyone because of the consequences. And my belief and my hope is that things will be reversible, but not until then. Until then, we might as well be planning between ourselves because we're not going to change anyone's mind. In my book, How to Dismantle an Empire, I have a chapter on Greece lightning. And in it, I quote some of the Greeks who talk about how a social problem is like a disease, and that when a doctor is looking to cure a disease, you don't want to treat the symptoms too early, because if you do that, the disease won't manifest. It won't become something that the patient says, oh, I need to change things. So we need to allow this disease to manifest, but we also need to be having our diagnosis ready and our treatment plan for when it does. On another thread, I've been talking about how ethical consistency is a redundant term because ethics is consistency. So my only dogma is that I am no better than anyone else, and everything else that I think stems from that one belief. In the case of good versus evil, I've talked before about the theodicy triangle, which is something from ancient theologians that says that God is good, God is all-powerful, and evil exists, are three things that cannot possibly coexist. So no matter what you believe, to even entertain the possibility of a God who is all good and is all-powerful, you need to eliminate the possibility that evil exists. Now, I don't argue that there are satanic rituals that happen in secret societies, because that seems like the most obvious way to get people to do humiliating things that you therefore know they can never rat you out without you being able to expose them. We know that people are more tied in to something that requires that kind of humiliation and sacrifice from them. So I'm certain that that happens, but I don't think that has any real effect because I don't believe in Satan. And I've talked in other episodes about biblical research into the origins of Satan by a woman, Elaine Pagels. And she's talked about Satan as being the near enemy, who were the Judeans who were revolting against the Roman Empire and who won. So that leads me to question things like the Nazi narrative and the idea that Germans are just born evil and horrible and doing things that we could not imagine someone actually doing. And in looking at this debate as liberalism versus socialism, I find that that's a false dichotomy, that it goes from socialism where the state and sacrifice for the state is the purpose, to liberalism in which the free market and the individual is the purpose. But both of those bypass the community, where on a small scale, you're able to take responsibility and make decisions and govern yourselves. And so my emphasis on small community self-governance is what leads me to prefer Franklin and his economic program over Hamilton. That what Franklin created was script, which is a colonial currency that enabled Philadelphia at, say, 100,000 people to become a powerhouse. It's the same kind of system that Hitler used after they had been devastated by the sanctions of World War I. And then it's what Russia has been using. It's what Iran has used. And now China has also created its economic powerhouse out of that same system. I find Hamilton to have supported specie, which was a metal-backed currency, which always wanted to migrate back in terms of the debts. And in the last debate of Trump versus no one, I'm hoping for no one, but not because I'm against Trump. I think Trump is the only possibility that I can see happening in 2 years. And that to me would be another pendulum swing that I'm hoping we're going to get out of. I think the world that we're in is going to have changed and become much more evident of what this disease is. The lightning strike is going to illuminate the problem, I believe, for everyone within the next 2 years. And I think we need to be ready with a plan for interconnected, sovereign community governments. If you want to go deeper and predict the future more accurately, here's Putin's peace and petrodollar pain, and here's one on more of the philosophy called 6 Levels of Reality with Jeremy Gilbert. Thank you, and I appreciate you watching my video and check out my Substack. Thank you.